Hello, welcome to episode 7 of Who on Earth. This one with somebody who I can't wait to share with the world. A good friend called Ursula Griffiths. It does get dark at certain areas. She struggled with mental and sexual abuse when she was younger. There is bulimia, there's anorexia, trying to get some sort of control back, and even things like self-harm, resulting in things like, suicidal attempts even. But she's also so funny, so quirky, so lovely, and it's great to see how such adversity hasn't dimmed that light that she has, that energy that just spills out of her, makes you want to be around her more, just makes her an inspirational person, and I can't wait to share that with you all. Now, we even have a little sprinkling of a 10-gram magic mushroom trip that she goes on. That one is very interesting. I've not even done such a dose, but it was done with reverence, it was done with growth, healing in mind. Now, I don't want to give it all away, so I'm going to just give you that little prompt to share and like and just whatever you can do. I think there might be a little thing you can subscribe to now, you can support the show, all things that massively help it grow. Get people like Ursula and your Bens and your Craigs and your Echoes, your Rubens out there. So I'd appreciate it. I'd like Who on Earth to become something I can do more regularly. These conversations are enlightening for me as well as you. And before I do that, I'd like to just drop a few words about transmute. Come here a moment. Do you want to expand your awareness? Tap into your creativity? Well then, you need look no further than Transmute Studios. I want you to picture this. You're there learning traditional African drumming with the mesmerising Mustafa. Or maybe you've gone down to extreme hip hop where Amy Azari actually makes fitness fun. And for those men out there that really want to see what they're made of, we've got Caveman, high intensity interval training where Transmute have created a real brotherhood. And it doesn't end there, we've even got transmorphic breathwork by the founder of Transmute himself, Mr. Joshua Obazuki. And let's not forget about the spectacular events that they've got on. We're talking things like Arignani, ceremonial ecstatic dance by the very talented DJ Wizardry. Or maybe you want to indulge yourself. Come to one of the sound baths where you're suspended in hammocks. And speaking of hammocks, meditation with Michael himself also does floating meditation journeys. That's where we're using storytelling, meditation and music to take you on an epic adventure of the imagination there so you can heal, a bit of self-discovery. And they've even got workshops, classes, things like Art of the Cosmos, naturopathic nutrition, tantric exploration, and so much more. So those horizons are waiting to be crossed. Come and dive into the limitless possibilities. Go down to transmutestudio.co.uk, find out where awareness meets creativity. Transmute Studio. Come down and play. Okay then. Hello. Welcome to Who on Earth, Ursula.
It's a pleasure to be here. Truly a pleasure. Thank you.
I appreciate it. We've just done a nice little yoga session together, haven't we?
We have, indeed.
I've been please help me. Because I'm a meditation teacher, not a yoga teacher, and it was quite evident. My hips were not quite going the way they needed to.
You're exactly where you need to be.
The truth. So, this is more about you than it is about me. So, we're going to start, as we always start, we're going to start with where you've come from, how that sort of builds context for where we then in the middle, and then we'll finish it with where we're at. But let's start with, where does Ursula come from?
Okay, so I was born down in Hereford, which is a lovely farming area of the country. And my mum's side of the family are all farmers, and I feel really lucky as a child to have had that exposure to the countryside. But grew up in South Manchester, and yeah, I had a fantastic childhood, and I look back at my childhood and I just see how much love there was from my parents, and I feel honestly like one of the most luckiest people on the planet to have had so much love from both of my parents. And I can see how much they did for me, and they've always tried their very best for me.
Because you said you just went for a holiday with them too, didn't you, in
I
Greece?
did,
And it's so nice to
yeah.
hear somebody being like, yeah, I'm in my 20s, I'm going on a holiday with mum and dad, and it was fantastic. It was connection,
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I'm really close with both my parents, and it hasn't always been the case. My teens were slightly more challenging, and we clashed heads a lot.
Well, go on then. Let's transition. We've had a nice, lovely little childhood. Mum and dad have really been loving.
Yes,
Now
yeah.
we're going into teenage years. Why was that more difficult?
Well, okay, whole combination of things really, and I think a lot of it, as I said, I look back at my childhood, and the main thing that I take from my childhood is the sheer amount of love from my parents. But it wasn't quite so plain sailing, and I had been exposed to abuse, sexual, physical, emotional, over my childhood. And I won't go into that too much, simply because I want to respect the person who did that to me. And I know that might sound like a kind of strange thing to say, but I've resolved what happened in my childhood within myself. But in terms of having resolved that with the other person, we're not there yet. And I would feel it unfair or wrong to kind of bring something up that hasn't yet been resolved with that individual.
Mm.
So with that in mind,
I mean, we can always just look at how that affected you rather than the actual.
yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of taking that into consideration, it was probably about when I was 7 or 8 that I started controlling the food that I was eating. So,
Okay.
in primary school. And I think back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was really smart about this. I knew when my mum would wake up. So I would go downstairs before she'd get up, and I'd get a bowl, and I'd put some cereal in, and I'd put a splash of milk, and I'd swill it round so that there was a kind of a level of where the cereal and milk had been. I was making it look like I'd had a full bowl. And I'd get a spoon, and then I'd lick the spoon. So the spoon had marks on it, and I'd put it on the side, and it looked like I'd had a bowl of cereal. And I was doing this at as I say, 7 or 8 years old.
I mean, you'd fool Sherlock Holmes with that sort of stuff. And what do you think was bringing that on such an early age?
So I think it was the fact that I felt like I had no control over my body. And that was a way of regaining control. And, everything that was going on for me at that time, it really affects how you view yourself and your self-worth and your self-esteem and your whole body image, I suppose. And that's been something I've struggled with for the majority of my life. And I can quite happily say that that's not something that I struggle with so much anymore. But yeah, so when I got into high school, I think it was year 8, I was maybe 13 years old. And that's when kind of this underlying problem with food, as a result of trying to regain that kind of control. And so it was when I was about 13 that I developed anorexia. And it was a really awful time, and especially kind of for my parents and my family having to work with me through this period, because with my mum coming from a farming background, she's used to feeding the 5,000. Like, my mum is an absolute miracle worker. The sheer size of the plates that my family would eat, like we're talking mountains of food here. So, and her love language is food.
Okay.
Like, my mum's a feeder. My mum is just like the mummiest mum. Like, she's absolute glorious woman. Love her so much. Love you, mum. And it was really hard for her, of course, as a mother, to not see her child eat, and her response was just to feed me more. And of course that scared me even more and pushed me even further away. And we used to have the most outrageous fights. Like, I'd throw plates at her, we were screaming, we would like literal have physical fights with one another. So yeah, it was a really challenging time. And at the same time, I think, this is when my mental health really started to drop, and I was experiencing severe anxiety and depression. And it was actually 13, around that age.
Quite a young age as well, isn't it, to be experiencing?
Yeah.
I mean, everyone has a bit of anxiety when they're that age, but depression and bulimia, and all that coming in.
Yes.
So did you say bulimia or anorexia?
So anorexia, bulimia came later.
Oh, sorry.
Woohoo!
Got that to look forward to.
And I, when I look back at myself, I remember being quite like an old child.
Oh, okay.
I've always been placed as quite an old person. In fact, my nickname at home is Grandma. As a little girl, I loved the company of adults, and I loved having conversations about the world and about bigger ideas. And I remember being at like family friends' parties, and was not interested in playing with the other kids. I wanted to be in the kitchen with the adults having these big conversations.
Well, that's why I wanted to get you in. The first time we had a conversation, we went deep, didn't we? And it was like,
every time.
It's like, so how's your day? Well
then.
But yeah, you've clearly got that about you. You're not just about these shell surface conversations. How's it going? Same shit, same different day. Like, that's not been you since I met you.
No, I mean, I love getting to know people, and really at the core of who on earth that person who on earth that person is. I feel like when we can really strip back all these layers of ourselves and get to know somebody on a deeper level, that's where the beauty really lies.
That's where the magic is, isn't it?
That's where the magic is.
You don't get interested in someone because of the car or the clothing or the body. It's what's behind all that. So obviously you're having these issues. Your mum's now fighting back because she's probably scared.
Yeah, of course. So it was around this time, and I took my first couple of overdoses as a child. I mean, I was still a little girl, let's be honest. And I think I'd always been kind of an alternative thinker, and I'd always been an alternative child. And I think a lot of that kind of played into the actions that I took and the way that I thought, the way that I perceived the world. And I remember being, 13, walking around school thinking, I'm dying right now and nobody knows. I was a really big thinker. I've been a big thinker and a big feeler for as long as I can remember.
Nice combo for a kid, eh?
Yeah. But, I wouldn't change that for the world, because I really feel like I feel the world in HD, and it can be so painful. But on the flip side of that, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful.
Well, if you want to be that sensitive to the beauty, it's also means you're now sensitive to the pain.
They come hand in hand. You
can't just
have
pick
one without the other.
Exactly.
That's it. And I didn't understand this, of course, at that time, but as I've grown, I've understood how all of these things that were going on for me were my greatest and biggest teachers. And actually having experienced such depths of despair and depression and whatever, that's really brought the whole world to life. The amount of times now that I just break out spontaneously crying out of sheer joy and wonderment and appreciation and gratitude for life, I'm like, oh my God, I'm alive. How amazing is this, that we get to wake up and we get to breathe, and we have this human experience, as high and low as it may be, as challenging as it may be. We have this real gift that is life. Anyway, so I was depressed, I was anxious, I had insomnia at this time as well. I was like sleeping maybe 3 or 4 hours a night, and I wasn't eating. I was in a really bad way. And I remember going on a it was like a little day trip with my mum, and she was trying to build a relationship with me and find things to do with me. And it was this mother and daughter's day, and we were having our hair and makeup done and having like a little photo shoot, and there were other mothers and daughters there. It was like a big group session. And the lady that was running the day, she used to be a model herself. And she said to me at the end of the day, she said, "Oh, I really think you should model." And for me at that time, I was like, oh my God, like this gives me some kind of value. This makes me some kind of worthy, because I, as a young girl, I was, I placed value in that. And how wrong was I? Oh my goodness.
We'll get to that.
We will. So,
but at this moment, you're thinking, wow, when someone's actually seen me.
Yeah, when my self-worth and my self-esteem and my body image is so low, the fact that somebody would suggest that I could model felt like insane to me. I was like, oh my gosh, like, could that be true? And my mum was like, well, okay, if you get better, then, and what's also interesting and kind of slightly twisted about that is it's kind of affirming the way that my body was. It was affirming the fact that I was skinny and restricting my eating and all of the rest of that. It was affirming that bad place that I was in. So, it's complicated. Anyway, so my mum said, oh, well, if you get better, then, you could model, but only if you get better. And I think she was really just trying to find anything and try and find any technique to try and help me get better. But because I was using that as an incentive rather than actually genuinely wanting to get better for myself, although I did start to eat better and start gaining weight, I just swipped. I will make words up as I go along.
Don't worry about that. We've all swipped once or twice.
Swipped. Honestly, I really do make it up as I go along. So I switched one coping mechanism for another.
We didn't actually get to the core of the issue then.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, I couldn't really understand why I was feeling the way I was. And I think a lot of these different coping mechanisms are just a way to numb and to move away from the core root, the root of the problem, and to move away from that pain. Ultimately, I'm making more pain, but, I didn't see it as that. I didn't even see myself as having a problem. I was in complete denial that anything that I was doing was wrong or not normal or not normal,
unhealthy.
But not unhealthy. Yeah. So my teens kind of was just a relay of one coping mechanism to another. So anorexia went to bulimia. Bulimia was self-harm. I used to run away a lot. I used to go into school drunk. I was quite well known with the police at this point. I was getting picked up by the police at age 13, unconscious on the side of the road.
So this was just from getting mashed, was it? Then?
Yeah. There was one time I downed this bottle of vodka and I was so sick that I'd actually torn a hole in my throat and I was coughing up blood for weeks. And when I first started kind of being bulimic, I didn't like the idea of having my fingers down my throat. So I would drink about 6 liters of water within an hour. And what that would do, not only would it make me be sick, but it would wash out all the salts and minerals and vitamins in my system. And my body would start shutting down. I didn't really know, I didn't know what I was doing at the time. And what would happen is I'd be on the floor uncontrollably shaking. Like my body it was like, it wasn't having a seizure, but that's what it looked like. I was shaking so hard. And I'd be so cold. There was nothing that I could do to keep myself warm. And I'd be there wrapped up in like blankets, thermals. I'd put my ski jacket on. I'd be underneath my bed and be so cold and I'd be shaking. And I did this for about a month or so. And I later confided in a counsellor that I was seeing at school. And she said, you need to stop that right away, because every time that you're doing that, you're risking going into a heart attack, because you are literally stripping your whole body of all the salts, minerals it needs, and it's shutting down. So I was like, whoa, okay. So it was a lot of self-destruct mode. And when I was 15, I was raped at home by a friend, and that just kind of sent everything spiraling, so much worse than it had been before.
Basically putting petrol onto a fire.
Yeah. And, a lot of what was going on for me, I was just so disconnected from my body and from myself and from my thoughts. I couldn't piece together my emotions. I couldn't piece together my thoughts. I was completely out of control. I had no real self-awareness. And, you know, I remember going into school on the Monday after being raped. And I told my friends, I said, so this happened at the weekend. I didn't say I'd been raped. And they turned around to me and they were like, Ursula, you know that's rape, don't you? And I was like, okay. And over that week, it was kind of beginning to settle in my body. And I was like, shit. And I called him on the Wednesday and I was like, you know what you've done, right? And he said, oh, please, like, you can't tell the police. Last time this happened, they broke down my door. It destroyed my mum and my siblings, like they were in pieces. And it turned out that I was the third girl that he'd done this to. And, you know, what was crazy was my parents, when I went back to the house, I thought my parents were in and they weren't. And that's where kind of shit hit the fan. And what's so crazy is that when my parents came back, I was dressed by this point, but there was quite a lot of blood on my sleeve, and it was just like business as usual. We were stood there in the kitchen having a normal conversation, and it was like, you know, I was just it just hadn't processed.
Sounds surreal, really.
Yeah, it was. And he was coming over to me and rolling my sleeves up, like in front of my mum. And, you know, it's just like...
A bit sickening, really, isn't it?
Yeah. So a week later, I took a really serious overdose. I was about, 80, 90 different pills and medicine. My dad's on medication because he had a blood clot, or he's had 2 blood clots actually that have gone up towards his lungs, so he's on meds for the rest of his life. And it was the fact that I took some of his medication that probably saved my life. Really? Because he realised it had gone missing. He figured that, hang on, I have less than I should do. So my parents found me, and you know, I was committed. Like, I'd written them a letter.
It wasn't a cry for help.
No. And I remember there was this moment when I was lying in bed and the sun was coming through my windows, and it was just so beautiful. And all of that pain and that heaviness that I'd felt was just evaporating. And I was like, this is it. Goodbye. And I was in such peace and in such bliss. And this is interesting because I'll come back to this. I've had similar experiences later in my life when I've not been in that space of pain, where I've had similar experiences through breath work.
Was it more the letting go?
It's that letting go. It's
just surrender. No, nothing else to do. Just
yeah. So I've been in breathwork classes where I've had that similar experience where I can. It feels like my body is going, and it's like, okay, goodbye, I'm ready.
But at this point, we haven't done breathwork.
No. Oh God. Absolutely not. No.
You gotta laugh or you'll cry.
Yeah. So, and then my parents found me, and there was this really weird moment where they were like, before we take you to hospital, you need to tell us why you've done this. And I said, oh, I've been raped. And my mum looked at me and she said, oh, I knew it. So, you know, I'll perhaps come to this later, but I feel like we are so deeply connected to the ones that we love. And I feel like there is this knowing and language between loved ones where you intuitively just know something. And I've had so many different experiences and different expressions of this over my lifetime, both in periods of pain and in periods of like joy and happiness. I'm like, okay, there's so much more to our life than we give credit.
Well, I feel like we're intrinsically connected beyond just the vessel even.
Oh, absolutely.
Just the consciousness.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you've told your mum that.
Yeah. So I get taken to hospital. My heart rate is down in the 20s. And I remember overhearing a conversation that my parents were having with the doctor, and the doctor said, well, she's okay for now, but we don't know the damage that she's done, and she could still die in the next week. So that was really quite shocking to hear. And now that I could see the sheer amount of pain that I'd inflicted on my parents, it felt different to me. I was like, okay.
So you're not just me.
Yeah.
Because when it's just you.
So that was actually a really big turning point, because before that point, you know, I was tearing my family apart. You know, my brother didn't want to come anywhere near me for years. You know, he hated the fact that I had such a negative impact on the family. You know, both my parents were sick with worry, with, you know, I was their baby girl and I was going through all this pain, and they were completely helpless to do anything about it. You know, I remember my parents saying to me at one point, they just said, like, we have to, like, it came to a point and they said, you know, we just have to let you go. We have to accept that the reality is we might wake up one day and you're going to be dead, and that's just we just have to deal with that.
Because I've heard that have you heard of Families Anonymous? It's basically the family members of people who are addicted.
Okay.
And one of the things they teach them is you have to let the loved one, the addict, to let them go. Doesn't mean you can't support, but you trying to control them right now and fix is not accepting where they are.
Exactly.
And it's making things worse.
Is
that similar?
Yeah, absolutely. That was basically where we were at as a family. But yeah, then there was this turning point, and I was like, wow, like, my parents really love me, and I was coming out. Well, it was a step, at least. There was still more troubles to come, but it was a step of like, okay, this isn't just about me. Anyway, so the police came in the next day, and I had to give an account, which was terrible, as I'm lying there with like drips in each arm. I make it out of hospital that week, and I go home, and I was super weak for like weeks, months after. You know, if I'd walk down the hallway, I'd be in bed for 3 days. It took a lot to rebuild the mental and physical strength also to get out of bed, to leave the house. I had, you know, I feel so lucky actually. I had so many different support workers coming. One lady's job was just to get me like dressed and out the house. And, you know, for a long time, it was really challenging just walking down the street and being okay with that. You know, and I know I'm not the only woman that predominantly who will have been affected by this. I think all women experience some kind of unwanted attention.
Because I remember you telling me you purposely dressed up. Do you remember?
Well, so yeah, what I used to do is, I mean, I would be dressed as I would usually dress, and I'd walk down the street.
So it wasn't even dressed up, it was
no,
just standard.
I mean, okay. like jeans and a top. And I would walk down the street, and I would count how many people hollered at me, or, you know, the amount of times people came up and would touch me, would slap my bum, would say disgusting things at me, would like beep their horn. Sometimes I'd be wearing my school uniform, and I'm like, so, you know, from being a young girl throughout the majority of my teens, it was constantly being reaffirmed to me that my body was not my own, that it was there simply for the pleasure of other people, and they could do whatever they wanted, and I had no say in the matter. And that was being, as I say, reaffirmed on a daily basis.
Well, you can understand why you were trying to take so much control then.
Yeah. So anyway, I gradually began to build myself up, but at this point I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And that's kind of showing up as all of these kind of crazy ideas. So I start to think that there's like this evil planet
No, go on.
Oh, here we go. So I think that there's this evil planet which is trying to get to me, and they're using my cat as like the middleman. So they're
obviously,
of course. So they're controlling my cat, and the cat's out to get me.
What's the cat called?
Licorice.
So Licorice.
She was a lovely, beautiful little black cat.
But she's out to get you.
But she's out to get me. And like, what would reaffirm this again? I would wake up in the middle of the night suffocating because she's on my head. And I'm like, the cat is out to get me.
Licorice, you bastard, you. Be gone.
Yeah. So I used to have like battles with the cat. It was all very weird and very, But I used to think that people were following me. I could feel hands on my body. Sometimes I'd feel like a knife on my neck and I'd be screaming. I had like a dog that would come and comfort me, and then there was a wolf that would be out, like that would scare me.
Is this in our mind?
This isn't. No. This is all in my head. And you know what's so funny is my psychiatrist at the time, he was like, Ursula, you're not psychotic. You've just got a very
active imagination. I've been told the same thing. Mine was the cat as well.
Yeah.
Pebbles you.
And I know that everyone has like an imagination, right? But I just feel like my imagination is wild, and that's how it's always been. And again, when I look back at my childhood, my imagination was wild, and I was a child that really loved my own company because I would just get lost in my own world. And it was a great place to be. I loved it.
Well, I'm a writer. That's my thing.
Yeah, of course. I mean, of course.
You've got it where the cat's trying to kill you, though. So.
Yeah, but so another thing I'll add to this is I also had this belief that I'd been sent here by kind of angels. I don't know if angels per se, but like these celestial
kind of
beings, and I was sent here, and I was actually supposed to have all of this stuff happen to me. It was like part of the plan. And the only way to get back to where I'd come from was to kill myself. Ooh. But this is the idea that I had in my head.
I mean, I can understand why, because there is a somethingness in there to us that isn't just this body. So I can see where that might be coming from.
Yeah.
But then, obviously.
So, like I said before, I've had these experiences through life where I've experienced something in this really kind of negative headspace. I've had actually very similar experiences when my mental health has been tippity top, and it's like the same thing.
Are you tired of feeling run down? Maybe you're struggling with some sort of health condition, or it could be as simple as you're not reaching your fullest potential. Well, I found a solution. Isabella Nutrition's here to transform your life, show you the incredible healing power of nature. Let me just introduce to you Isabella Bradford Johnson, a skilled naturopathic nutritionist with a passion for showing you how to achieve optimum health, well-being, with tailor-made nutrition and lifestyle plans. She'll show you how to fill your life with vitality, renewed energy. Now, Isabella firmly believes that your body holds the key to your healing. She just wants to show you how to unlock it. Through the power of lifestyle and diet changes, Isabella will show you how to heal from within. Be that best version of yourself. Now, whether you're looking to improve your overall health or target a specific area, maybe it's gut or hormonal issues where she specialises, Isabella will have expert guidance and support to show you how to have a future filled with joy. Now, it's not about quick fixes, short-term solutions. No, it's about long-term transformation, sustainable results. So stop waiting to take care of your health. Go down to www.isabellabradfordjohnsonnutritionist.uk. Book a consultation with Isabella today. Embark on a journey filled with health, vitality, lasting well-being.
Isabella Nutrition, empowering you to live your healthiest life.
So when last year I went on a very deep journey with mushrooms, and I met angels, whatever you want to call them.
Was this the 10 grammer?
It was, yeah.
Tell you what, let's quickly let's just go down that alley a sec. So
yeah.
I remember you telling me this, and this wasn't just, I'm going to do 10 grams. Now it was, you'd planned, you'd done breath work, you'd done meditation, you'd done yoga, you'd really, for like a week, you'd set yourself up.
Oh, yeah. So there was, I'd been planning this for months, and I was given a book called The Psychedelic Explorer's Guide. Fascinating book.
Oh, no, my friend James, he did lend it us, I didn't get round to reading it.
Yeah. And it basically talks about the importance of setting, having an intention, having a guide, this kind of thing. So for a couple of months, I'd been preparing myself physically, emotionally, mentally, eating super clean.
Almost like a dieter then.
Yeah, really thinking into what I wanted from the experience and how I wanted to approach it. And then that week leading up to it was amazing. There was so many kind of things that I felt like really led and supported and kind of carried into the experience of through the mushrooms. And one of them, for example, I had a shiatsu massage at the beginning of the week. And during that shiatsu massage, for those of you that don't know, shiatsu, it basically means like pressure with the hands. So it's older than acupuncture, and it works with the energy meridians through the body, and it's a whole range of different techniques. So it's pressing, tapping, kind of swooshing, it's moving the body in different shapes, all sorts of different things.
From Temple, she did get her on as well, actually, but she did one as she was practicing to me. And it's quite kind of what I did to carry on.
It's a really beautiful practice.
So you've done your shiatsu, you've done
and he was, so the practitioner, he was working on my womb, and I started to cry, which is kind of understandable from my previous life experiences, whatever. And at the end, he said, I felt like you could have screamed. And I was like, interesting. And one of the things that happened during my mushroom trip was I saw this white thread of light, and it came into my womb and started like sewing me up on the internally. And it was just the most deeply healing experience. But to go back a few steps, I have a bit of a knack for like telling 8 stories at once and then coming back to the original.
My job's
story.
To come back. Don't worry. You just go off on one.
Okay. So I was with these celestial beings, these beings of light, whatever you want to call them, angels, whatever. And I understood how I'd before coming to Earth, I'd chosen which body I was going to come into. I'd chosen what events and things that I would have happened to me in this life, because I need to learn certain things. There's certain lessons I have to take from. And I saw that all of these particularly trying, challenging, hard parts of my life I'd chosen. Like, I was like, that needs to happen to me so that I can learn this lesson and move forwards and grow, and I will take this from it. So it's that same kind of concept with this idea of being kind of from another place, sent here, or choosing to come and have certain things happen for a reason.
I mean, I feel like that aligns a lot with what I believe. The only thing might be that we came here for a reason, and it probably wasn't to get out quick. No. And I think that's where maybe you were getting mixed up with the...
Yeah, so what I find so interesting is this former Ursula, who was so distressed and had no kind of real relationship with spirituality, was actually having quite a lot of spiritual experiences, but just in a bit of a
In your own way.
In my own way.
Yeah, in your own little way.
As I do.
So is there anything else on this 10-gram experience that is noteworthy?
Oh, goodness. Okay. Where shall we start? Let's start from the beginning. So...
Because just for those who aren't aware, this is psilocybin mushrooms known as magic mushrooms.
Yes, yeah.
It's not just a bit of oyster.
No, these were the most beautiful little Liberty caps.
And Liberty cap, the strongest ones that you could go for.
Yeah, picked on a very witchy hill. They had special witchy vibes to them.
And for those of you that aren't experienced, 10 grams is
it's a lot.
It's a lot. I have never done that, so
it's a lot.
It's a lot.
I was
but
rolling them into these balls and like chomping on a ball. I'm like, okay, and another one.
But you've done it as unconscious as that sounds. You had made a conscious effort. You'd done months of prepping for it.
Yeah.
You're in it.
I'd fasted all day. We'd cleaned the house from top to bottom.
You had sober sitters as well, didn't you?
Yes. Yeah. My friend was my sitter. He came to check on me an hour in just to see how I was getting on. Actually, and he came to me at the end also and brought me the most delicious bowl of food. But yeah, that first hour, and the only reason I know it was an hour, I mean, my concept of time just went out the window. Not a clue. But the only reason I know it was within the first hour was because he came up and checked on me. And it all came on very quickly, as you would imagine, 10 grams of mushrooms too. And I started off by kind of my body, and I can come to this also later through my experiences through breath work. Shout out to Craig.
Craig, yes. If you haven't seen Craig on episode 2, my man's a breathwork genius.
Shout out to Craig,
Seaton,
honestly.
episode 2, worth watching.
Yeah, I love you, Craig. Thank you so much for everything that you've done for me. So my body, I'm not doing this. Ursula is not doing this. It's whatever energy was there is moving me. And I had a similar experience recently, and the best way that I can describe it, how it feels to me, it's like my cells are expanding and getting bigger. And if you, I like, it's so hard to put all of this into words.
Of course.
And I'm really excited. So my brain's going a million miles an hour, and I really hope this comes out and makes sense.
Do your best.
So if you can imagine all your millions and trillions of cells inside your body, and they are growing, they're expanding, they're becoming more voluminous and light and bright. And it's this real kind of expansive, beautiful feeling across all your millions and trillions of cells. That's how it feels like.
The noise, have you seen, you know, I was telling you episode 3 and 4 with Ruben, the way he does it, it's like a...
Yes. Yes, Ruben, and I understand. Yes.
That's how he does it.
I mean, he sums that up perfectly.
There you go. Because you were trying to say something that the words too clumsy.
The words don't do it. The words just don't cut it. Exactly.
There we go.
Exactly. So it's like this filling up, and then from that filling up, it's just just the energy, you know, it's moving me. I'm gone, like absolutely no Ursula there at all, and it's just this whatever is filling me up. So all the movements come through, my hands taking different mudras, and then the sound starts coming through, all different types of sound. And what was particularly memorable for me was like this, I started throat singing, and I wish there'd been some kind of recording, because I don't believe it myself, but I felt like some old tribal woman, and this throat singing was like my thing that I'd done for my whole lifetime, and I was like the throat singer. and I would kind of flip from my whole body being like angled up, and I'm singing out, and I can see the sound traveling out of my mouth, and it's creating all these beautiful like ripples and shapes and colors and all the rest of it, and it's rippling out into the room. And then I go vroom, and my whole body would kind of collapse into itself, and I would start singing into me. And I could see again how those waves of sound were rippling through my body. And I was flipping like that for a little while. And then my experience got ever more blissful. And I couldn't tell you exactly how many, but I think I must have had, I don't know. I was probably orgasming about every few minutes.
Are these just like energetic explosions?
Yeah, I mean, like there's nothing physical going on with my body. I'm not touching myself or anything like that. It's just like,
it's not that kind of show.
No, it's not that kind of show. But yeah, I was in bliss. I mean, like pure ecstasy.
I mean, I've got there from Vipassana before.
Yeah.
Where it's just this concentration of energy, and then it's just gone through the system, and it's just like, whoa, what is this?
Hello.
I'll have a second serving of that. But so
then my friend comes up to check on me.
So innocent,
and I'm like mid, like, ooh, and he comes in and he's like, "You okay?" And he looks like this. How would I describe? Like this crazy, sweet little elf mouse woodland man. And all that I can muster to say is, too much stimulation. He's like, "You're good."
Now,
and that's when I blast off into space. I completely leave my body. I leave the room, and I'm gone for hours at that point. And that's when I'm up in wherever, and I'm meeting with, again, I wouldn't even know.
Beings. Don't worry about labels.
Yeah. And I have this experience of how I have been everything. I have been everyone. I am no different from anyone. It's this real sense of oneness. And I also saw how my current life could take an infinite amount of different routes and paths. And actually, none of them mattered. Excuse me. It didn't matter which route I went down, because ultimately I end up at the same place. So it didn't matter if I went down being, I don't know, a firefighter or a musician or whatever. If I renounced my life and went to live off in a cave, which sounds delightful. Why not? But I end up at the same place, and I will take what I need to. And there's kind of this balance between me having a certain amount of control of directing my life, and also certain things kind of like, you need to experience this and this will happen, because you have to have this to like level up. Yeah.
This is the upgrade.
Yeah.
Now, I'm mindful that we could speak about psychedelic experiences all day, but it is Who on Earth Are You? And although that experience was great then, you haven't done that yet.
No. So, oh gosh, no. Where were we?
So that's my job. So right now, you've had the modelling thing. Your mum said start eating properly. You've had the bulimia. You've then had your dad's pills, and we've then struggling to walk down the street. Yeah. That's where we're at.
Okay. That's where we're at. Okay. So, I then actually get taken out of mainstream school because I was just too poorly. I tried going back to school for a little while, and it just was not working out for me. I was actually collapsing just from the sheer amount of stress. I was on a high dose of antidepressants, and I'd literally turned into a zombie. It had just taken away everything, you know, any feeling. I was just completely numb. Oh, hang on, where were we? Actually, okay, I think I missed out a bit. I was having quite a severe episode. I think it was just after Christmas. That's right, because I was admitted into a psychiatric unit, and that's where I spent that year's New Year. I think I must have been about 16, maybe.
Good
15
New Year
16.
Party.
It was great.
Everyone was crazy.
Yeah. You know what? Being in that psychiatric unit did me the world of good.
Okay.
because I was just so overwhelmed with having to be a functioning person in society. Yeah. Which, I mean, I feel like actually, yeah, most people can relate to.
I don't think you'll have a person who isn't going, I could do that.
Yeah. So to have that break from having any expectation, and I got to have my 1 p.m. nap every day, and I was around people that understood me. My absolutely bonkers self, they understood me and I understood them, and I feel really grateful to have had that opportunity to be there, and to have met the people that I did, and have had the support that I've had.
Yeah.
And honestly, I am so ooh, hello, Mike.
She's not talking to me there, she's just almost at the mic.
So lucky to have had the level of support that I've had. Anyway, so I come out of hospital. I'm not forced to go back to mainstream school. I finished my GCSEs at the school that was kind of for people who couldn't go to mainstream school for whatever reason. So I bearing in mind, I went to a really good school. Went to Altrincham Girls Grammar School. Ooh la la.
Posh girl.
Oh my God. It was a state school, but it was really hard to get into because it was such a popular school for the local area. I think 1,000 or so girls sat the exam to get in the year that I passed it. And I hated it.
I was about to say well done, but
no, I hated it. It was not for me. I mean, like a concentration of girls going through their teenage years, that is hell on earth.
Well, I went to an all boys school, didn't I?
Oh,
so
okay.
I had the opposite.
Yeah.
What should we do? Should we have a fight?
Honestly, I think that's better. Have a little fisticuff, get it over and done with, and then move on, Anyway, whatever. So yeah, and then I think it was around this time that I ran away from home again. And I think this for me was a really big turning point. Because I wasn't even away from home for too long, really, in the grand scheme of things. But it gave me a different perspective on my life. And similarly to what we said before about kind of having that change in perspective, it's like, oh, this isn't just about me. There's other people involved. And I was running away from home mainly because that's where the trauma was.
Yeah.
That's where I'd been raped. It was painful to be in the house, and I was so angry. I had all this anger and all these emotions associated to that space, and I just didn't know how to manage it. Anyway, so after spending a little while kind of not knowing where I was going to sleep, not knowing when I was next going to eat, or, having to think about where I'd go to the toilet, or when I'd next have clean clothes, or any of this stuff, when my life kind of came to that, it put everything else into perspective. And I was really lucky that for the most part, complete strangers who were the kindest, most generous people I've ever met took me into their homes, looked after me, with no ill intention. They just genuinely were concerned for me. And I was like, wow, aren't humans amazing? Like that kindness. That selflessness.
Well, we can get so lost in thinking everyone's awful, everyone's out for themselves, everyone's can't trust that person, and it's
not the case.
Not everyone's like that.
I think I think you could argue that I have a good enough reasons to not be trusting, but actually my strong belief in life is that people are good and people mean well, and I think that what you believe in life is your what you believe affects your perception and affects your experience.
Well, that's what they mean by creating your own reality.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you've worded that really well. So Anyway, so and then I had a not so nice place where I was staying, and it was quite violent, not necessarily to me, but it was quite a hostile environment. And I was like, wow, I have two immensely loving parents at home, and although they've not always got it right, and that's okay, like they're figuring things out as they go along too, and we're all here with our pain bodies, just trying to make it through, you know.
Someone's read power now.
Yeah, of course. So, you know, I was like, but they love me, and whatever else is going on, however painful it might be, whatever I'm feeling, I can put that to one side because my parents love me. And that stands and means for so much. So I gradually started going home, and I started rebuilding a relationship with my parents, and I would talk to them. Wow, who would have
nice,
thought?
isn't it?
Yeah. And I would I would tell them the things that are hard for them to hear, that I tried, you know, in the past I'd wanted to protect them, so I wouldn't tell them what was going on. And I didn't think they would understand. And perhaps they didn't understand even when I told them, but the very fact that I was communicating was then building this trust. And then from that trust, you know, we were able to build on top of that relationship. And, you know, similarly with my brother, I was talking to him, and I was rebuilding trust with him. And I started by, you know, really acknowledging that I was not the only person hurting, and that it'd been my whole family that had been affected. And I switched the narrative, and I wanted to hear about how my parents were feeling, and how my brother was feeling. And it, you know, I was moving away from that very self-centered place that I'd been in. You know, I was selfish. Anyway.
Are you still doing the modelling at this point?
So, no.
Okay.
No. I'd been scouted quite a few times. But obviously at that period was not in a good headspace.
Yeah.
And then when I was 17, one of the photographers who had scouted me when I was about 15, he said, "Okay, get back to me when you're a little bit older."
Did you say it like that? Yeah.
Yes. I speak in alien. So I got back in touch with him, and we'd done some work together, and he said, "Oh, I think you should get with an agency." I thought, really? I go, "Oh, I don't know." And by this point, my whole relationship to modeling an image had changed. I'd completely switched how I viewed myself, and I was moving away from that that need to have validation from other people. And I was really beginning to understand in myself that it didn't matter what I looked like. You know, none of that stuff mattered. It's how the relationship that you have with your internal self, and how the relationship that you have with people in your life, that's the most important thing. And I could understand that because I'd seen the other side. And I think I was having those realizations as, you know, still young, you know, 17, because I'd been through what I'd been through.
Yeah.
And I could really appreciate the true meaning and true value of life. And it was not appearance. Now, of course, there's still that ego part of myself that's like, ooh, modeling. But it wasn't, you know, I could put that to bed. It wasn't an issue.
That wasn't the energy fuel in it.
No, not at all. Anyway, so then I signed with this agency, and things just rocketed. I at least, yeah, that's how it felt to me. I was working loads. I had lots of really exciting clients.
What were some of the clients then?
So when I was probably, I think I must have been about 18, 19 years old, and I was working a lot with Nike, and they were flying me across America. I was working in New York, San Francisco, Portland, Atlanta, Brooklyn. It was so exciting, and I cried every time I was on the plane. What? I was like, no way.
So this was happy tears.
Happy tears. I was like, I didn't think that I would be alive at this age.
Because you've gone from all this in the young age to now be getting...
I didn't think I was going to make it my 18th birthday. And here I am flying to America. Like, what? It just felt so surreal. I'm like, why me? Like, little old me from Manchester. Like, how? How did they find me? What? Like, surely there's other girls that would be better for this job. Like, I didn't feel like it was real. I was like, okay, like this is really exciting. Anyway, and a little side note, I actually felt a lot of these opportunities that were opening to me were being divinely sent from my friend Jenny. So Jenny, she was one of my best friends when in my later teens. And in fact, we weren't even that close of friends for a long period of time. Our friendship was relatively short, but oh my gosh, it was deep. It was so much love. And
well, I mean, I've got friends that I've spoke to a million times, but it's never been anything.
Yeah.
Where I've got some friends where I barely know them, but we've gone so deep. Like me and you, when we have a chat, we go deep in it. And
time is no valuation of it. It's the real experience and the depth of that relationship.
How much you've managed
counts.
to connect.
Yeah, exactly. And what I find really interesting as well is it was like we'd had parallel lives. We'd actually both gone to the same school that you had to go to when you weren't in mainstream school, and we just missed each other. Our lives had kind of gone. I'm doing a hand gesture.
You're under pressure. People on YouTube know exactly.
Yeah, people on YouTube know. But so we were parallel, and we'd almost meet, and then we'd kind of go apart, and then we'd almost meet again. There was like all of these times in our lives where we were, we could have been 100 meters away from one another, and we didn't. We didn't quite get there. And then when we did meet, Jenny was shortly after that, she'd had a brain tumor for several years. She'd had cancer, and she decided that she was going to go into palliative care, and there was kind of no treatment left for her.
For people who don't know what that is,
palliative care is when you stop any kind of treatment, and it's kind of end of life care, basically. And she was so brave. I barely saw her cry, and she was the one supporting me. And I'm like, how? Like, how can you have that much strength? And she said, Ursula, don't worry. I'm not going anywhere. I'm still going to be here. I'm just going to be here in a different way. She's like, you'll know. And oh boy, I know. Like, the Jenny moments I have, and I'm like, oh, Jenny. Undeniably Jenny. And after Jenny died, that year following, so many incredible things happened for me, and I felt like it was all Jenny. I felt like she was pulling the strings. So every time I was on that plane, I was like, "Thank you, Jenny."
So she passed by this point.
Yeah. And I said to her, I'm going to go and live my life for the both of us. Like, I'm doing this for two people now.
There you have it. Episode 7 is down, part 1 of our conversation with Ursula Griffiths. Now, we had a lot of stuff going on there, didn't we? We had the sexual abuse, we had the mental abuse, we had the self-harm, the bulimia, the anorexia, we had a 10-gram mushroom trip. That was bloody interesting, wasn't it? And yeah, did you see her energy? That was somebody who's processing it, has processed a lot of it, a lot of healing's been done, and I hope that inspires you, because to hear what she's gone through, but then see her, she is love. She is love on legs, as I said. Now, you want to go check her out, the details are in the description. Now, there's yoga, but there's loads of great stuff that she's putting out there. Also, check out Transmute, check out Isabella Nutrition. Myself would be great. Any likes, any shares, any subscriptions, any donations, whatever you want to do to help support the show, I love you for it. Episode 8, part 2 of the conversation with Ursula. That's a Boxing Day treat. Enjoy your Christmas. I can't wait to see you after you've had all your presents unwrapped. If you don't celebrate Christmas, I just hope you had a good time. Otherwise, guys, I love you and leave you. Episode 8 coming up. Travel, yoga, loads of other crazy little anecdotes that she tells, and a little bit. Well, I'll keep it a secret until next time. You guys have a great Christmas. Peace and love.